whatever. David Bowie wishes he could pull this look off. Oh, hey, you snuck in on me again. Welcome back, kaiju fans and enthusiasts. You are balls deep in the trilogy now. We will be hitting up Godzilla 2000. That's right, we're moving into the Millennium series now. Help me out, cell phone. Our director tonight, Takeo Okawara. He's the only one I'm going to mention. I don't like this soundtrack, so I'm not going to go into this composer. The best parts of this movie, frankly, are when we move back into Akira Ifukube. So this is, I love this movie. It is just so fun. It is exactly what you want from a Godzilla movie. It's the right blend. It is goofy, it's a little bonkers, it's a little off the wall, but it also roots itself in just the right amount of realism and seriousness that you can enjoy it without being embarrassed by it. I love it, and I think almost every fan I've ever talked to online, deeply reminiscent. I saw this movie in theaters. I got to see it in theaters, an actual rubber suit, everything in theaters. I saw it with a group of friends, and I loved it so much. The next day, I went to a matinee again. I begged my mom for the money. It rocked my world. It blew my mind. It was so amazing to get to see a traditional style Godzilla film in the movie theaters. This will always have a special place in my heart. But even as I've gotten older and developed my taste, this one still sticks with me. There's something very nice about this film. So one of the points I said we're going to tackle, how does it reflect its period in film, and how is it a sign of the times? I think it is very telling that whereas with The Return of Godzilla, 1984, we stick to kind of the traditional build-up. There has to be time, there has to be an abeyance. We have to wait to see the monster and build up that excitement and tension. And this film is not interested in it. You literally are face to face with Godzilla within the first, I think 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. He is right there about to attack a car. He is right there stomping through tunnels, and then he's attacking a city. In no time flat, he is attacking the city. And I think, and not to be, apologies to any fans, not to be derogatory about this, the term I often hear is the ADD cinema culture, or ADHD. It's, the younger generation that is growing up with the internet, that is growing up with the MTV and that hip hop, they have a shorter attention span. They need you to get to the action right away. And I think this film definitely reflects that aspect. It is, and maybe I'm part of it, it's paced well. I enjoy the pacing of this movie. I like that almost right away we get to see the new suit. The first 10 minutes of this film, we have some really strong cinematography. This is one of the things with each of these reboots I'm covering that I really adore, that whenever these companies rediscover the King of the Monsters, suddenly they really want to help the audience take in the power and the majesty and the imagination of what this monster, what it would be like. And Godzilla 2000, it's an exemplary, I can't say exemplary example, that's redundant. It is an outstanding film in that respect. The first 10 minutes, the shot where the little Godzilla tracking crew, the tornado chasers of Godzilla, are right on the highway next to him, and he's walking by. Oh my God, is it gorgeous? It's one of the few shots in the Millennium Heisei Showa, it doesn't matter. You really get a sense of the power of how amazing it would be to see a animal this large moving past you. And then the camera slowly rotates and Godzilla's behind them, and he's silhouetted by the fires he's left behind in the cities. It's gorgeous. There is some really outstanding, gorgeous cinematography in this film. This film is also where I developed one of my theories, and I think because I was an acting major, studied acting, it seems like most things in theater come in threes. So most of my rules, I mean, maybe you've noticed, solo adventure, kaiju adventure, versus adventure. For me, one of the rules about setting up really excellent kaiju shots is a three-layer step. At least with cities, right? With cities, you have the first layer, you have small details of like power lines or the subway tracks or cars. That's our first layer. Then this next layer, a little further from the camera now, we have the kaiju. And because we have that first layer, it sets up the image, the size. You get a sense of how large this monster is within the city. And then the third layer has to be the city behind, the bigger the skyscrapers. And when you set up all three layers, it creates a very powerful impact. And throughout this movie, that's where I started to really notice this layering effect of how, and the Millennium series, I think just because of the sophistication of the technology, the Heisei period gets it in every now and then, and the Showa period will even surprise you with this rule of three every now and then. But this movie just frequently knocks it out of the park. The models, the city looks better than it has looked in a long time. And we're really only, I mean, for production time, when they started the production of this, maybe 3 full years after Destroya. And as much as I love a lot of the shots in Destroya, this movie looks a lot better. It looks a lot better. Toho stepped up their game, I think, between, you know, the American Godzilla and then obviously the Gamera series. They had to. They knew they had to. So, whereas the other reboots, I mean, very specifically 1984 is very traditional. It is going to the base, the core of what the 54 one was. Whereas this one seems more interested in re-inspiring kind of the 60s Showa and then even into the 70s Showa. I mean, once again, we've got Godzilla, we've got an alien force that he just has to show up and attack and prevent. And it's not ever really fleshed into why he wants to attack the other monster. It is well fleshed into, though, why the aliens, the millennials, want him. We get into this thing with the regenerative cells that Godzilla has. It's one of the fun things about this movie that, yes, it's a little zany sci-fi, but it's not totally bonkers. It's not totally off the wall. Actually, frankly, I think they're taking a lot of cues from what was set up in Godzilla vs. Biollante, this idea of the Godzilla cell structure and the benefits, the advantages to his mutations. And I think it's probably one of my favorite alien subplots in the whole series. It's subtle and it's sophisticated. This idea that the alien race kind of hid out underwater until they found a form of life on Earth that could really help them dominate the Earth. And they meet Godzilla and they hack the computer systems, they absorb Godzilla's information. I mean, maybe they were just trying to get the Gen Xers or the Gen Yers or whatever it was in 2000. They were trying to appeal to the youth demographic. I'm not sure. But they actually handle it pretty damn well. It's maybe one of the only benefits of the Japanese version. And I'll come clean here. I've never seen the full Japanese version. I've read synopses and I've found a few clips online. But one of the interesting things is that the millennials, when they hack into the computer system, they actually broadcast and inform to everyone, we're here and we're taking over. they are an aggressive alien species, even if it's just one alien in a ship. That's kind of never cleared up. One thing the Japanese version gets into, an interesting idea, is that the reason we get Orga is because it can't handle the atmosphere. Even with Godzilla cells and the information about Godzilla, it doesn't know how to adjust to the atmosphere, and so it comes out of the spaceship and is supposed to just mutate painfully, radically into that weird Orga form we get. I really like Orga's design. I think it's a really fun, interesting monster. It's a shame the suit isn't handled better. We do get some melee fighting, and some actually innovative melee fighting at times, but it's such a clunky, awkward suit that you just really can't do a whole lot with it. There goes the cat. But it's impressive what they do try to tackle. I do appreciate Orga in a lot of ways. Don't you dare step on that. So one of the pros I can feed into this film, actually, I really do like the human element of this movie. It's understated. They're not as good as like what you get maybe in Mothra versus Godzilla or the original Gojira, but the human element is interesting. And isn't it almost stupid that we haven't had this idea of Godzilla chasers, that like they chase him like a storm? I love it. I love it. It ties right into Honda's theory about how to handle the monster. We're right back to the natural primordial essence of Godzilla. And we even get back to one of the debates the very first film does bring up, which is, should we seek to kill this monster or should we study it? Isn't it a miracle that a lizard, a dinosaur, whatever, lived through nuclear explosion and benefited from it in a lot of ways? This film isn't, it acts like it's interested in that debate and it never really gets into it. Like, admittedly, our villainous captain of the military, I had his name, it's gone, I'm gone, but it is a good discussion. It is a good plot point that a lot of the films just move on to either Godzilla as a villain or Godzilla as a hero. And in this film, they do, for scene to scene, they want to explore this idea that could he be both? Can't we both fear him and also recognize that he is a valuable resource to science? I think that's one of the strengths of the film. But really, the thing this film does that the other, well, I can't say Legendary doesn't get into this, but this film, because of the nature, it's a pseudo-alien invasion, it just feels very Showa. There is a campy aspect to this, whereas, you know, Garrett Edwards and the Legendary reboot is so much more focused into the realism and the core of where Ishiro Honda started. This one is willing to admit and acknowledge, I guess, the 70s, really, the more campy aspect of Godzilla here. And I don't mind it. I really don't. It's one of the main complaints I hear the most is that this film was lazy in its reintroduction to Godzilla. And yeah, I could see that. I could understand that because they're not worried about re-explaining everything. But I don't think it's a bad thing. At this point, it is 1999. Everyone in Japan knows how Godzilla became Godzilla, even people who don't care about this genre. And same in America. You say Godzilla, people get the idea it's a radioactive dinosaur. I think it would have been kind of foolish to sit there and take up a bunch of time rehashing the origin of this monster. I think it's just delightful that they start right away with the action, and he is there, and the world and the government is already having to deal with him. I don't mind that. Okay, dude, either you gotta calm down or I'm gonna toss you out, because I'm trying to do something here. I kind of touched on this earlier in the review. It's fascinating. It's an anomaly that 40 years into the Godzilla franchise, suddenly America has produced an edit of Toho's film that Toho loves so much more than their own edit. Whoever thought that could happen? As I mentioned, I have not seen the full Japanese version, but I have never heard anyone sit there and recommend it to me. That's part of the reason I haven't sought it out. I think the American version is delightful. Yes, there's some groaner lines. Yes, sometimes they do some lip sync dubbing stuff that is a little tasteless, but for the most part, it's fine. It does its job. And some of the scenes I have found on YouTube, it is immediately apparent the pacing and some of the editing was off when characters talk about certain things, and then the next shot, it immediately like jars me. I'm like, that made perfect sense in the American edit. Why didn't it here? It's very bizarre to me that Godzilla 2000 somehow outpaces almost every edit, American re-edit, American dub of a Godzilla film. You never would have expected it, but it did. And didn't we owe it to them? After Godzilla, did we not owe it to them to show some respect back to the King of the Monsters? I think the only other real negative for me personally is the score. It's not that it's the stupidest thing ever, that it feels totally contradictory to the film. It's bland, it's lazy, and I'm talking about the Japanese version. I've actually found on YouTube all the Japanese tracks and listened to them. They don't make a lot of sense to me. It's another thing that the American edit actually rearranged where some of these scores were positioned in the film, and they sound better. They make more sense. It's very bizarre to think like that Toho produced a Godzilla film and then America had to step in and figure it out. Anyway, I love the movie. I think Orga's fun. I wish we could have gotten more and done more with Orga, but I think it's a fun idea. I think it is a nice upgrade as far as the discussion of how we reinvent the alien invasion subplot. Really approve of it. And as far as reboots go, it hits the ground running. Both the other reboots, 84 is very worried about its backstory, about its origin plot, and even Legendary's 2014 wants to take a little more time with it and get into, I guess, some mythos, really chew into some of the character more. This one it very comfortably and casually assumes you understand who Godzilla is, you understand what Godzilla is, and you love it, and you're here for a reason. Let's get to the good part. And I respect that. I appreciate that. So, and boy howdy did it do wonders to clear the stink of what America had done 2 years earlier. So, Godzilla 2000. Love it. I will be signing off. Well, I'll be joining you again. Come on, we'll see each other soon. But until then, I'm signing off from Denver, Colorado. We're the Mile High City. And we're getting higher all the time, bitches.